All right, so today we are just going to kind of focus on the basics of Chapter 8, like some new vocab we have, some different concepts, and then at the very end we are going to talk about shifts. So remember when we did exponential, we had different variables that could move the value either left or right or up or down. Okay, so there are also shifts for quadratic graphs. Okay? All right, so let's first go over some vocab. We'll draw some pictures, kind of get the concepts going, and then we will work on the shift part. Okay? All right, so a quadratic function, all you guys really need to know for quadratic function is just that form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so that is kind of our quadratic function. Okay? So remember when we just went through our whole factoring unit, right? And our whole simplifying quadratics and all that. So that is what our quadratic function is. You guys have seen that before. Okay? All right, so that is quadratic function. All right, a parabola. Okay, so that's how you pronounce that weird P word, parabola. Okay, it's kind of fun to say. All right, so parabola, this is simply just the shape of a quadratic function graph. Okay, so it is the shape of a quadratic function graph. Okay, and this shape, you might want to think about it as a U shape. Okay, so it looks like a U. Okay. So I'm going to draw one over here, and then as we add more vocab, we will kind of add more points to it. All right, so all it looks like is this. Okay, so a parabola looks like a U. Sometimes it might be like a skinnier U. Sometimes it might be like a real wide. Okay, but in the end, it is just kind of like a U. Okay? All right. Vertex. All right, so the vertex is just the point, so it's a single point. All right, so we're going to write single point. All right, and what I mean by single point is, you know how we have like our x and y, our coordinate point, so the x value and the y value. So a vertex is just one of those. So it's got one x and it's got one y, and that's our vertex. Okay, so it's a single point. And it is going to be, so if the graph opens up, the vertex, so if you think about the graph opening upwards, so it would look like this, the vertex is the lowest point. On the graph. So if the graph opens up, the vertex is going to be the lowest point on the graph. So what do I mean by that? Down here is the vertex. So it's the part where the graph starts making its U. Okay, so if I draw the vertex, I know that my graph is going to start going on a U shape on both sides of that vertex. Okay, so the vertex is just that single point that's the lowest if it opens up. Okay, so a parabola can also open down. Okay, so if it opens down, what do you think the vertex is? So if it's opening down, the vertex is going to be, yeah, the highest point, right? So now it's on the top. Is that a car alarm? Okay, cool. All right. All right, so any questions on vertex? Okay, that's kind of a tricky one, but it is just a single point. It's on the very bottom or the very top, depending on which way your graph opens. Okay, so if we are going to label over here, this one would be our vertex. Okay. All right. Axis of symmetry. All right, so this is kind of a fun one. All right, so the axis of symmetry is just going to be a line. So it is really just a line that the graph reflects over. So if you think about symmetry, you kind of think about like a reflection, right? It's the same on both sides, okay? Remember when you were like in elementary school and there would be like half of a butterfly drawn for you, and there would be that line, and then you were supposed to draw the other half, and it was supposed to look just like you remember this in like science class? Okay. So kind of similar to that, okay? So if I look over here at this lovely graph that I made, my axis of symmetry just runs right down the middle. And notice, what does it intersect? It intersects the what? What's that blue point? Yeah, the vertex. Okay, so that's the last thing that you want to know about the axis of symmetry. So it's the line that the graph reflects over, and it goes through the vertex. Okay, so it will always, always, always go through the vertex. Okay. So kind of like when you were younger, if I'm given half of a parabola here, and I'm given this axis of symmetry, I know exactly what the other half of my parabola looks like because it's going to look the exact same as the other side. Okay, so it's going to come kind of like this. Okay? So parabola is symmetric. Okay? All right. And the very, 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 very last word we have is probably one of the most important ones. It is actually the whole reason that we did the factoring unit. It's the whole reason that we did solving by square roots. Remember how we had those solutions, right? So the zeros or roots or solutions, it's all the same thing. Okay, so you can call it any of those. But what that means is this is going to be where the graph hits the x-axis. Okay, so where the parabola hits the x-axis. Okay, this is also why, remember when we solve by factoring or solve by square roots, what is that always set equal to? 0. This is why we do that. Because if we want to know when it hits the x-axis, that is why we set it equal to 0. Okay, so that is the whole purpose behind it. So I'm going to put y we set equal to 0. Okay, so that is the whole purpose of why we did that, because that is what we are doing. Okay, so if you want to think about this, we're going to draw a picture that has all of the stuff in it. Okay. All right. So we have our vertex, right? So let's just start with vertex. All right, so we have our vertex. What other things do we need to have? So this is our vertex. What other words did we learn? Good, axis of symmetry. Okay, so remember it goes through the vertex. Okay, through the vertex. What's probably the most important thing that we need on there? Right, the parabola itself, right? Okay, so there is our parabola. Okay, so let's just say for funsies that our x and y coordinate, so this is our y-axis and this is our x-axis. Let's just say that the vertex is at the origin, so 0, 0. Okay, so let's just say our vertex is 0, 0. Okay, so our solution then would be where that parabola, our 0, our solution, our whatever, would be where that parabola hits the x-axis. So in our case, the only point it does that is at the vertex. Okay, but you're going to have other types of parabolas where if this is the x-axis, maybe the parabola goes something like this. Okay, so you remember how most of the time we had two solutions? Look at this in action. One solution here, one solution there. Okay, so that is the whole purpose of what you were doing in last chapter. Okay, that's kind of the visual. Okay, so if you have a parabola or a quadratic, remember it can always be represented by a parabola, where that parabola hits the x-axis are your solutions, are your zeros, the whole purpose for factoring. Okay, so that's it right there. All right. Any questions on any of that vocab? I know we just learned a lot of stuff. Okay. Lots of stuff. All right, the book, I guess, did a somewhat better job of drawing the parabola and everything in it. I don't know, I think mine's pretty good, but whatever. Okay, so down here you will just see that they drew some things for you. They did add something. Okay, so notice the graph is decreasing on the left side, and then it hits that vertex, and then it's increasing. Okay, so that's just kind of how they all go. Or if it is opening downward, it would be increasing, hits the vertex, and then decreasing. Okay, so it can be the other way around depending on which way the graph is opening up, but that's the only thing that, yeah.
Because this is what we're going to do tomorrow, and you're not here, right?
Yep. They'll have these video notes too, but yeah. Yep. All right. Any questions on any of this page? Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so notice using Desmos, when you graph y equals x squared, it looks something like this, right? So this is y equals x squared. Okay, and then when we graphed y equals negative x squared, it looks something like this. Okay, so what can we conclude here? When a is positive, graph opens up, and when a is negative, the graph opens down. Okay? All right, so now up here you can go to your A value and you can write opens up or down. Okay, so those blanks up there, you're just kind of filling in what that value tells you. So our A value tells us if the graph is going to open up or if it is going to open down. I just realized you guys can't see what I'm doing. Sorry. Okay, so graph opens up or graph opens down. So I just redrew what I had from Desmos and kind of drew it over here. I know Desmos does it prettier, but you know. All right, so what did you learn? Problem 2, what did we learn? What does that value, what does that H value do to the graph? Moves it. Moves it what? Good, left or right. Okay. The H value moves the graph left or right. All right, so if our H value is positive, is it going to move left or right? Good, it's going to move left. So it's just like in our exponential, it's kind of opposite of what you think. Okay, so if that H value is positive, so right here it says +2, it's going to move left. All right, which means that if it is negative, oops, it is going to move right. Okay, so once again, opposite of what you think. All right, so I'm going to come up here and say that my H value moves the graph left or right. Left or right. Or what's another word for that? What kind of shift? Starts with an H. Yeah, horizontal shift. Okay. So I want you just to know that word because sometimes in your homework or on a test it might say describe the shift. And yeah. All right, so horizontal shift. All right, so if that is what our H value does, then what does our K value do? Good, so the K value is going to move it up or down. All right, so moves graph up or down. And if it is positive, it is going to move it what, up or down? Good, up. Which means if it's negative, it is going to move it down. Okay, so remember the K value is just like we would think, and then that H value is kind of opposite of what we think. All right, so up here I'm going to write up or down, and that is a vertical shift. Okay. All right. Any questions on anything that we did today? So shifts, vocab, words, anything? Anything at all? All right.